Hey, welcome back to the Mesh Ball Grid. My name is Andre. Thanks so much for tuning in. I just want to take a bit of a detour before we jump into the corp side of the unboxing of this new data pack, Station 1, to talk about a specific card that came out, because I think this card is pretty interesting and probably warrants its own conversation, let alone the length of the videos have been getting pretty long, so it's probably good to break it up. And that's this card here, which is called MCA Informant, which is pretty interesting. This is what it looks like, real big. This is a scan of the card. And before we talk about this, I just want to clarify that this is not meant to be like a sky is falling sort of conversation. I just wanted to talk about what this card does and how I feel like it might impact the meta and what you can do against it and what you kind of have to watch out for. Obviously, time will tell how impactful this card is. I just want to, I'm not doing this out of pure negativity. I just think this warrants its own discussion. So without any further ado, this is MCA Informant. It's an NBN operation. It's 4 credits, which is relatively expensive. It's a terminal operation, which means after you play this, your turn of doing things is over, so you're not going to get anything done after this happens. And you install MCA Informant on a connection as a hosted condition counter with the text. The runner is considered to have 1 additional tag. The host connection gains, click, and 2 credits. Trash this card. This card this card referring to the connection, not to the condition counter. So basically, you lean over the table. If the runner's playing a connection, you pay 4 credits. This gets strapped onto the runner. The runner's considered tagged, and the only way they have to untag themselves is by paying money and a click to trashing their own connection. It's an informant. One of their connections has been exposed or has been paid into being an informant and tagging the runner. And thematically, that's pretty fun and that's pretty cool. This also is like the first time that we've seen a card like this on the corp side where they reach over the table and kind of interact with the runner cards in a way. It's this very similar design to Parasite. And Parasite's a pretty common card from the core set where you reach over and attach it as a hosted condition counter, I think. Oh no, you just install it as a program. But the same kind of idea that you attach this to a card and something bad happens. Now the runner's or the corp is kind of returning that favor. So it's very important to understand the runner's considered to have 1 additional tag. That doesn't mean that, that means that they can't clear the tag. There's no way for them to actually affect the amount of tags they have besides getting rid of MC Informant, because as soon as they, it's just not how it works. They're considered to be tagged. It's very similar to Paparazzi, where Paparazzi says the runner has a tag. So this targets connections, and it's important to understand what the connections are, just to kind of get an idea of how this is going to affect deck building and what kind of decks that this will work well against. So this is a list of all the connections, and there's currently 49 connections. And if you don't know, connections are generally resources that have really good effects. They're almost all, I think, unique, so they're generally very strong cards. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think we want to go through just some of the really important ones, the ones that decks are either built around, or the ones that you probably been including in decks for a long time. Because MC Informant might change this heavily. So let's start here. This is Aaron Moran. Aaron Moran came out a couple months ago. And he's a very, very, very good connection. In fact, arguably too good. And I think a lot of people will actually look forward to MCA Informant just because it punishes Aaron Moran, who is not only ubiquitous, but has kind of really hampered certain archetypes that he wasn't, I don't think, inherently designed to fight out against. So Aaron Moran has been protection against kill decks and protection against tag decks, and now I don't think you can depend on him that much, even though he generally has been good at defending himself, considering he removes tags. Aesop's Pawn Shop also has been a cornerstone of a lot of Shaper decks and some noise decks, most noise decks. And now I don't think you can actually reliably have Aesop's Pawn Shop up. If you rely on this as your econ engine, that might be an issue. And I'm not excited about that considering how much I like Aesop's Pawn Shop. Beth Kilrain Chang, I think if this card gets trashed, your deck still will work, but it's definitely a good card that you don't want to see trashed. Actually, Compromised Employee might begin to see more play, considering Los just came out. It works well with Los. Otherwise, what do we have here? I think we have one more. Yeah, Film Critic. Oh, man. Film Critic's actually... It doesn't see as much play as it once did, considering mid-season replacements. I don't think it's as popular, but I think relying on Film Critic is actually going to be a pretty big deal in the near future, especially when Terminal Directive comes off. I'm not going to spoil, I don't like talking about cards that aren't out yet, but there's a card coming out called Hunter Seeker. If you want to look more into it, so be it. But Film Critic seems incredibly important once Hunter Seeker comes out, and the fact that MC Informant trashes Film Critic might actually be an issue. Looking forward, we have things like Kati Jones, which a lot of decks do rely on this as economy, and if Kati becomes an informant, you basically get one last ride of Kati before you have to do her in. Oracle May. I've been playing a lot of decks that rely on Oracle May lately, and being able to perhaps make that deck just not work because the corp is playing MCA Informant seems like a bummer. Political Operative, Proco, very good cards. Can't rely on those anymore, I don't think. Scrubber, actually, mind you, might be a big issue. There is asset spam is kind of popular in the meta right now. A lot of people are playing decks with a lot of assets, and a lot of decks are including Scrubber just to be able to keep up with that. And now there's a card that exists that can, in theory, delete your Scrubber. And if your Scrubber's deleted, there's a chance that your win rates against like certain asset-heavy decks plummets. And I'm not excited about that. Otherwise, connections. More connections are you. Tech Trader is an economic card a lot of decks rely on. Same with Supplier. Can't count on that anymore. The Source. Love this card. It's a counter to that, I guess. And Underworld Contact, I guess, is also an economy card. But like, these are really strong cards that a lot of decks are actually entirely based around. Like things like Beth Killing Chang, not so much, but things like Aesop's Pawn Shop, it can be like the entirety of a card. Like the entire engine relies on Aesop's Pawn Shop in a lot of decks, a lot of like Shaper decks that sell a lot of cheap things like Haley. And now that card you can't just count on it anymore. And that seems like a big deal. This kind of design in which there's a card that exists that basically says all these other cards of a specific subtype or specific type, if you're playing against them, you can destroy them or they aren't going to do anything. I think it's pretty heavy-handed design, and it's a kind of design that I know I specifically do not care much for. I think a very close example is Rumor Mill. So Rumor Mill is a current that says all unique non-upgrade regions and assets, or sorry, non-region assets and upgrades are blank. And when this card came out, people, like before this card, people were playing a lot of upgrades like Caprice Nase, Ash. These are defensive upgrades that are unique. And as soon as Rumor Mill came out, there's a big chance that if you're playing those upgrades and the runner's playing Rumor Mill, those cards in your deck are blank. And it's obviously not a good thing to put a card in your deck that's blank just because it's a bad draw and it's not really fun because you can't do anything with it. But also that was kind of like the win condition of a lot of these decks. And these decks, basically Glacier decks with upgrades, have been almost entirely pushed out of the meta, even to date, which not a lot of people run Rumor Mill anymore, but just its existence alone has sort of had this this really strong effect on the meta, because I don't know how many people really want to show up to a tournament with cards in their deck that might be blank in certain matchups, let alone being missing a win condition. And I think MCA Informant kind of falls in that same camp of design, where it's just, oh, did your deck rely on a connection to succeed in any sort of reasonable way? No, sorry, it's going to be a problem. And admittedly, you can run multiple connections and install them, but admittedly also the corp can run multiple MCA Informants. And it's also only 2 influence, right? So it's not hard to splash this. Like say you're running an Argus deck, or you're running a Jinteki Personal Evolution deck, and your Bane right now is Aaron Moran. I could see that those decks could run MCA Informant 1 or 2 copies just to be able to deal with this connection. And it doesn't seem unreasonable, but I don't like the idea that your connections are just like Rumor Mill-esque blank. Now, 4 credits does also seem like a lot of money, but I'd argue that that's actually not that bad, considering 2 things. Firstly, if the corp was to tag a runner and trash the connection, just trashing the connection alone costs 2 credits. MC Informant costs double that at 4 credits, but it also gives the runner a tag. And let alone the runner has to pay 2 credits to trash their own resource. So the extra 2 credits from the MCA Informant versus the extra 2 credits the runner has to trash this thing, like it kind of balances out. Let alone you don't have to spend money tagging a runner. Other similar cards like this, the cards that kind of interact with the runner without them doing anything, and that's also like a really important part. Like things like Snatch and Grab is probably the closest thing to MCA Informant. And this card is largely useless unless you have more money than the runner, which is something that's really difficult, I think, to do nowadays because of Temujin contract. But like compare how much money you have to sink into Snatch and Grab sometimes versus how easy it is to play MCA Informant. And that's one of the things about this card, about this design, that I'm a bit skeptical about, is that it's non-interactive design in some ways. Yeah, the interactivity of the informant and trashing itself is kind of cool, and I think actually pretty thematic. Compare that to other like common cards like C-Source. And this was like traditionally the way that in classic Netrunner, the corp would interact with the runner in a tagging method. And this requires the runner to make a successful run. So if the runner's not comfortable doing that because they don't have enough money, they can just not run. And it's a very similar thing with mid-season replacements. If you don't run, you're not going to access an agenda, or hard-hitting news. If you don't run, you can't be hard-hitting news. Yet at any point in time, MC Informant can interact with you. I think all the other cards that were destructive, that were on this basis, that don't require interaction, required the runner or the corp to spend a lot of money or have like a big credit differential. So like Snatch and Grab is something we just saw. We also saw Enforcing Loyalty, which didn't see that much play, even though this is also like a similar card. I think I would have had an issue with if I was making videos at the time it came out, or these sort of videos. I've been like, oh wow, this card seems like such a problem. I can now trash the Gordian Blade from the criminal and they'll be out of the game forever and they didn't have to interact with me. Like there's a chance this is of a similar power level because of the non-interaction, but it's much harder to win a Trace 3 they have to spend 2 credits on than it is just to pay 4 credits, right? Excuse me. So, I don't know. I'm just saying, this trashes connections, and that's obviously pretty good. Now, the cool thing about this, like, say that you attach this to the runner's Aaron Moran, and that's the only connection they have. They have a chance of just not trashing their Aaron Moran and saying, like, okay, well, now I'm tagged. And if you can't follow this up with like a punishment, and I think there's a lot of punishments that you can follow this up with, obviously any of the tagging punishments, if the corp wants Aaron Moran dead, they'll have to pay an additional 2 credits to trash Aaron Moran, which is kind of funny, just being like, okay, well, yeah, there's an informant in here, but you're going to have to deal with it because I don't care, right? I'm tagged. I'll live with that fact. And I think that's interesting that maybe the corp pays 6 credits to trash something and then basically remove the own tag. And if that happens, so be it. But I don't think a lot of decks will be running MCA Informant unless they have a way to follow up on tag punishment, I think. Unless, again, like that idea that I brought up before about Jinteki decks. Maybe they won't. I don't know. Okay, now the runner has to pay 2 credits to remove their connection to clear this tag and get rid of their connection. And that's technically a cost and a credit. Like, so that's pretty annoying. If you want to deal with this in a better way, in theory, you can always Aesop's Pawn Shop the card that is tagged, technically. Totally worth understanding that the card is attached. This card's attached as a hosted condition counter, so it's not actually attached as a card. So you can't actually like pawn shop the MCA Informant. You have to pawn shop the connection it's attached to. Funny enough, for Aesop's Pawn Shop, it can't pawn itself, like a snake eating that same snake kind of idea. But you can always pawn shop your Aaron Moran to basically make 3 credits instead of sending 2. But I guess they would have just MCA Informanted the pawn shop, so I don't know if that's actually ever going to be relevant. Another funny card is the Price of Freedom. This lets you trash connections, so already you're saving 2 credits, I guess, if you play this. But now the corp can't advance cards for the next turn. So that stops the corp from scoring in most times. I don't know how good that is. It does bring up the fact that MC Informant can be used as a tempo play. Like on a turn that the corp wants to score an agenda, they can install the agenda, maybe advance it, and then play MCA Informant on the runner. So now the runner is probably going to spend a click and lose 2 credits before they can consider contesting the remote. And I think that's probably okay. And if you do that on a Kati Jones, then they're going to have to take money off the Kati, and maybe that's half their turn down the drain. Like, I think that might be an okay play, but otherwise the Price of Freedom is probably, like, its second part of the effect is unlikely to fire. Specifically, if the deck that's running MC Informant is not trying to score. So I don't know if you include that. It seems like hard to include. So if the runner is tagged, what can you do? Very simple stuff. If they have 1 tagged, that means they're viable for things like closed accounts. And I think that's obviously pretty good. If they have no money, they're going to be clicking for credits. Also, if they have no money, they didn't trash this thing, they can no longer trash this thing. They'll have to click for credits to trash this thing. That being said, I think the most important thing to play around is Scorched Earth. If you have 1 tag and the corp has 2 of these, or 1 of these and a way to find another one, I guess, you can play 2 Scorched Earth, and if the runner doesn't have any sort of protection, specifically protection that's not a resource, they're dead. And I think that's probably the biggest thing NC Informant is going to be attached with, the threat of Scorched Earth, Scorched Earth. Closed accounts is obviously good, but double Scorched Earth is obviously very good too. Now, of course, this card is terminal, so you can't like tag the runner Scorched. They're always going to have a turn to interact or react with it. Again, like these tags that are on the from the MC Informant, they can't be interacted with. So if you're thinking you're going to do a deck that plays MC Informant, but also plays like Keegan Lane or like Lily Lockwell or Observe and Destroy, any of the cards that have remove a tag as an additional cost, these won't work because that tag cannot be interacted with in that sort of way. However, cards like Big Brother do work. So if the runner is MC Informanted, you can play Big Brother on your turn if they still have a tag, and now they have 3 tags. And now you can remove those extra 2 tags because they're like officially physical tag counters, sort of. That's not how the ruling works, but that's the idea. Those are tags you can interact with. So that's actually like pretty reasonable punishment. Like if Big Brother gives you 3 tags, now with 3 tags, the corp can start fast advancing with psychographics, 3/2s, 4/2s. And that can be an issue, but I think Scorched Earth is probably the biggest thing you have to worry about. Now, luckily, you can always remove the tag. You can always pay 2 credits. You can always click for 2 credits, remove the resource, the informant resource at the worst, the worst that'll happen, and you won't die. So alone, MCA Informant, basically, like I don't know if the Scorched thread is that real with this, but basically it just says, remember all these connections. I don't know whether or not you're gonna play them anymore. And I don't like that sort of design. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's heavy-handed. I'm interested to see what this will do to the meta, what this will do to deck building, whether people will stop playing certain decks that rely on connections, and what that means. Like, does that mean people will like revert back to prepaid pad economies that don't rely on resources? Or yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what that does, as much as I'm not interested that large portions of the card pool now seem much worse ideas to play. But here we launch into part 2 of the MCA Informant video, which is kind of interesting and very weird. So MCA Informant says, install MCA Informant on a connection. And these are all 49 runner connections. But lo and behold, there's a corp connection, which is something that you probably wouldn't have expected. And this is Corporate Troubleshooter. This is a one of in the core set, so a lot of people don't even have more than one of this card. But this one, mind you, is a legit connection. It's the only corp connection. They haven't printed one since, and I think, like, it makes sense to me. I don't have any facts that back this up, but it seemed like at the time in the core set, while they were subtyping things, they thought, oh, connection means someone who shows up and helps you. But since then, it's always been a runner thing, and they just never went back and fixed this. So this technically exists. And the question now, the question is, can you put an MCA Informant on a Corporate Troubleshooter to make sure the runner has a tag? And the answer is yes. Yes, you very much can. And this question was asked in the UFAQ, the unofficial FAQ, which answers questions of people ask. And these questions, like these answers, that's the problem with the UFAQ. I'm not going to go into it now because I go into this all the time, but this is what the designers have said, at least. So all the questions are asked here. Can you install MCA Informant on a res corporate troubleshooter? On the res corporate troubleshooter, the answer to all of these are yes. So this is an upgrade. You put this in a server with ICE. As your last click, you put MCA Informant on the corporate troubleshooter, and now the runner's considered tagged, and now it's their turn. So what we said before about the MCA Informant allowing you time to react to the fact that you suddenly got a tag with no interaction, this now says the runner has to get in the corporate troubleshooter server and trash it this turn, or they're going to be tagged at the beginning of their next turn. And there's a lot of cases in which you can make that very hard, if not, in fact, impossible, especially if you do that early on in the game, where the runner might not have breakers. Yeah, another thing that does come up, which is very interesting, is that, I think I said this in the UFAQ without explaining this, is the corporate troubleshooter doesn't even have to be rezzed. Which you think, like, why would you ever consider that, considering it's 0 credits? Like, who cares if you res it or don't res it? And I think it's actually better to always fire this on an unres corporate troubleshooter, just because of the existence of political operative, which originally I thought might be a counter to this sort of archetype. Because if you get a political operative up, you can always trash the card with MCA Informant on it. Oh, also totally worth saying is that if this is on a corporate troubleshooter, the corp has access to this click 2 credits trash this card ability, not the runner. So the only way to get rid of this thing is the runner has to get in and trash the corporate troubleshooter. So that's why political operatives seem good. But you don't have to res this card. And now the question is, if you don't res this card, how does the runner know that you attach this to a corporate troubleshooter? Because that's the only corporation connection. You have to reveal it to them, which is kind of wacky. The idea is you're like, okay, I'm installing this on a connection, but here, I'll show you, it's a connection. Proof. Yeah, you see, believe me now? And you put it back face down, which is kind of funny, but that's technically what the ruling is. Just because trust is not technically a thing you should have to rely on in a card game. And I do agree with that, as much as that doesn't sound like good team spirit. All right, so this is an issue because the runner has to get in the server, or they're going to start the next turn tag. They have to trash this. And of course, this all is on the top of the threat. If they run this at a point where they don't have a sufficient amount of money, let alone after they break the ice and trash this thing, they're super open to hard-hitting news. And now they have 4 tags, and that's obviously a lot worse than 1 tag. And you can put this, because it's an upgrade, in the most defensive server you have, the most defended server. It's not like you have to build a remote server and protect it. You can just be up to your normal stuff of like, oh, turn 1, ICE HQ, ICE R&D, and then by turn 2, corporate troubleshooter, MCA Informant. And that might not be the best time to play it, considering that it's unlikely that you have 2 Scorched in hand. But if the runner is tagged And let alone say you're playing something like sync BRE, you can now flip your ID and just say, yeah, runner, you have no more, or not sync BRE, sync everything everywhere. The runner might not just be able to rely on connections, or sorry, not even connections, resources anymore, because you can just trash resources. Seems like an issue. You can also just play closed accounts over and over again. Be like, oh, yeah, you closed accounts, good luck on your turn, and they'll have to click for credits and probably not be able to get in the server for a long time. That seems like an issue. It's a way to tag the runner, protect the tag, and in early parts of the game, even in late parts of the game, you can really protect the tag. And if the runner can't get into the server, they're going to be tagged. And that doesn't sound fun. That sounds really not good. And I think the part that bothers me the most about this is that there was no way this is how the card was intended to be designed. Like, I guess in some ways, like you could argue that thematically it makes sense. Like the corporation has a troubleshooter that they call in to be like, okay, tag the runner. That's kind of what your corporate troubleshooting job is. Like maybe that does make sense. Informant part. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you could argue that. But like, there is no way that I believe FFG designed this card to be like, oh, we want a card that like punishes runner connections. Yeah. But also works with corporate troubleshooter. Like that. I don't think that's what they did. Like this seemed like an oversight based off of like some wonky typing 4 or 5 almost years ago. And when this question was asked in the UFAQ, this kind of gave FFG, or at least the unofficial FAQ of FFG, the option of saying like, oh, you're right, we did not intend that when we designed this card. Technically MCA Informant, the text on it should say install MCA Informant on a runner connection or on a connection resource. Like they could have fixed that. But they decided not to. They decided, no, this works as intended. So now we have to deal with this side of this really interesting coin, in which corporate troubleshooter is a very legitimate win strategy. Which is kind of bothering me, because there's no way that they designed MCA Informant to work with corporate troubleshooter, because there's no way that they typed corporate troubleshooter intelligently 5 years ago. 4.5 years ago. I don't know exactly what the numbers look like. Anyways, how do you protect your corporate troubleshooter? There's some really compelling ways to do it. If you put corporate troubleshooter behind a data ward, the runner has to be able to break this thing because they're considered tagged, right? So this thing actually has 4 end the runs. It's an 8-piece strength piece of ice. They have to take another tag or pay 3 credits, break all 4 of these subroutines, pay 2 credits to trash the corporate troubleshooter, and then if they can do all that by turn 3, turn 4, maybe even, they have to not be hard-hitting newsed. And that's absurd. That's like really, really nutty. And that's not even how crazy it gets. This is Universal Connectivity Fee, a card that doesn't see much play besides the like fun decks that I run with bandwidth. This runner loses a credit unless the runner is tagged. If the runner is tagged, which mind you they are, they lose all their credits in their card and credit pool. This is a trap. It doesn't have a subtype, so you need Faust or you need an AI breaker to deal with this. And if you just put this, let alone just this, not even in front of a data ward, just this in front of a corporate troubleshooter, they lose all their money. If they're not running Scrubber or they're not Wizard, they can't even trash the corporate troubleshooter. And if they do, they've just been hard-hitting newsed. 100% they've been hard-hitting newsed. Because they have no money. Like, it's such an issue. Like, this doesn't seem hard to protect. If you just run Data Ward in front of corporate troubleshooter, heck, if you put Universal Connectivity troubleshooter, like, it's golden. It's so good. And that's not, like, something I think that's that hard to set up. That seems like an issue. That you can put on so much power that you're like, oh, hey, runner, you have to run now or you lose the game. Like, that's not something that's existed before. And lose the game also is a bit of a hyperbole. Like, unless you have double scorched or you have, like, Big Brother into Boom, it's not lose the game. But also, if your deck is running 3 of data wards and they can't deal with the corporate troubleshooter, MCA Informant, all your servers are incredibly safe. Any server, the universal connectivity is incredibly safe. And you've just blown yourself open the widest window. Also, of course, all the other, like, cards that revolve with tags, things like Pachinko also work. That's not as exciting, obviously, a data ward, but that's something. Also, the Quantum Kitty technically can't be stolen when MC Informant is up, so feed those away. Also, of course, you can now just start giving people global food initiatives and then exchanging them back with exchange of information. Like, if the runner is perpetually tagged, it's an issue. It's 100% an issue. And that seems like a problem. That seems like a problem. Like, let alone if this card just like targeted connections, I'd be like, okay, well, that's not fun because I like connections and this doesn't seem like it has a lot of intelligent interaction. Like, there's not a lot of counterplay. If you run a connection, they play MC Informant, that sucks for you. I hope you have a duplicate of that thing or your deck doesn't rely on connection. But now they can like ice their tag. Woof. Of course, also, I have to mention this 100%. Even if you do this on their connection, you can now res a zealous judge. So like if you play MCA Informant on their connection, now you're a zealous judge. So now they have to like pay 2 credits to remove their connection that's been informed, get into the server with zealous judge, trash the zealous judge. Otherwise, you can just start clicking them for credits. And this, of course, also is very good if you have an MCA Informant with a corporate troubleshooter. Like you have it protected now, you just install zealous judge, click on it. And now if they trash that, it's an issue because hard-hitting news, and it just seems rough, man. Seems real rough. Cool Synergies is sync, obviously. This thing that I'm going to spell wrong, Haas-Bioroid. Ooh, that wasn't right. Single A? Oh, you probably have to say all of it, so I guess we'll look it up. But Haas-Bioroid is a cool thing. It has 17 influence. And so you can, basically, whenever the MCA Informant is online, you can see their entire hand. That's what it does. I guess I've explained it before I found it. Yeah, so that's cool because, yeah, once it's up, you get to see their entire hand, so you can see if they have... what's it called? You can see if they have I've had worse in hand before you double scorch them, let alone just knowing what they have in hand seems really, really good. But I think that's it. I think that's all I wanted to say about this card. This card's totally nuts. It's like totally nuts for so many reasons. The connection thing is nuts. Corporate troubleshooter thing, it just seems absurd. Obviously, this is I'm recording this basically on a Sunday, 4 days after this card has come out, so I can't really say how much impact this is going to have on the meta, but it seems like it's going to have a lot of impact on the meta. Like I don't see any other way around it. I don't think 4 credits is expensive. It's 2 influence, so you can see it everywhere. I think it's really important that this is in decks that like get countered by certain connections, but now we're just throwing like silver bullets at each other, which doesn't seem like a good way to do a card game. This is also the section where we would talk about what counterplay can you have against MCA Informant. And I'm struggling to come up with anything. Like your best thing is actually just don't run connections. Political Operative, as we discussed, doesn't do anything. Any resource that prevents you from damage also doesn't do anything. So I think the best to actually answer we have is Plastic Carapace and a way to make money from no money. So things like Easy Mark. Things like... I hope I'm not forgetting anything here, because I really wish there was more to come up with. Plascrete stops you from dying. Easy Mark, obviously, is good, because now you can go from 3 credits if they close accounts you, and that maybe helps you start your economy. I think prepaid economy might get a bit better now, because it doesn't rely on resources, and resources might be in a bad spot. Also, mind you, if you do have tags, the Corp can start playing Best Defense, so even any of these things can be torn apart. That could be an issue, right? If you have 1 tag, you can now trash things that cost 1, so that's another big part of the card pool. Anyways, that's my little piece here about MCA Informant. It's obviously, yeah, just like I said before, it's yet to be seen of what this is going to do to the meta, but I'm not a big fan of the design, and I think the corporate troubleshooter thing seems like just an oversight that when confronted about FFG, just like, yeah, no, that's cool. We intended that, without putting more thought into it, because I think as soon as you put any thought into it, that seems like an issue. It really does. I just don't see how anyone's going to be able to get through a data ward, let alone a universal connectivity fee, to be able to, like, contest this thing. And also, mind you, corporate troubleshooters want influence. So, like, do this in an HB deck. Who cares? Like, just pay 2 influence for a bunch of these and protect your corporate troubleshooter. I guess you don't have data ward and universal connectivity fee, but that's fine. Because the runner's perpetually tagged. And so you can trash all the resources. I don't know. It's best in the yellow. That's 100% for sure. Anyways, if I've missed anything, please let me know in the comments. Also, I want to know your what kind of decks you're trying to build with this and your thoughts about this. What are you looking forward to doing with this and the sort of decks that you have, the ideas. There's also a big chance that this doesn't do anything because a lot of runners might be just playing Tag Me entirely. Like, I think Counter Surveillance is a card I talked about yesterday, and that card seems absurdly good. Like, just the amount of win condition in one card seems like a lot. So there's a chance that this card might not do anything, but in those cases, like if this was a deck that was running MCA Informant with Universal Connectivity Fee alongside Data Ward, you're probably good anyways, right? So it might not even matter. But like if going Tag Me, maybe that's a way around this, but again, if Data Ward's there, it's gonna be a problem. Anywho, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Again, let me know what you think below, and most of all, yeah, thanks for watching. Ciao.